A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight here on Rajya TV. I'm Tracy Shilchi, and in the next 30 minutes, I'll be getting you the day's top stories from India and across the world. Let's start with the headlines. Kolkata flyover death toll reaches 24. Political blame game breaks out in the state as rescue teams rule out the possibility of any more survivors. Prime Minister Modi to represent the report on steps India has taken to secure its nuclear assets underscores a threat of non-state actors in escalating nuclear threat at a summit in the US. Bombay High Court rules that offering prayers at temples is a fundamental right of every woman, says it's the government's duty to protect them. PDP chief Mehbooba Mufti to be sworn in as the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir on the 4th of April. Party hopes that she will usher in a new era of peace and prosperity. And tobacco product manufacturers go on a protest, decide to shut down their factories over what they call ambiguity in pictorial warnings policy. But let's start with the latest that's coming in from Kolkata. The death toll in the flyover tragedy climbed to 24 today as rescue operations entered the last stage. The Bengal government ordered a high-level probe into the incident. Meanwhile, with the assembly election just 2 days away, in fact, the first phase, the incident has triggered a political blame game. Opposition parties are accusing the Mamata Banerjee government of callousness.
Hopes of finding more survivors under the debris faded on Friday, with the authorities stating that no more bodies are expected to be retrieved. Rescuers worked all night with cranes and jackhammers to clear concrete slabs and steel girders. At least 19 people were rescued since Thursday, many with serious trauma injuries.
There is some debris there that is being removed, and it is being ensured that there is no more dead body under the debris. As far as the possibility of live person is concerned, that is no more in this area.
Injured people, some of them are in a slightly precarious condition, but the rest have been, some of them have been discharged, and the total figure is around 89.
So could you throw some light about the rescue operation, the current state of it?
Current state is almost at the end.
सभी लोग बहुत दुखी है. हम लोग मॉर्निंग वॉक से भी इसीलिए आए कि किसी तरह का कोई हेल्प किसी को करना हो, किसी को ब्लड चाहिए, कुछ चाहिए. हम लोग अभी हॉस्पिटल भी जाके आए हैं कि कुछ जो हम लोगों से बन सकता है हम लोग सब लोग करने के लिए तैयार हैं.
The Kolkata police filed a case of culpable homicide against Hyderabad-based construction firm IVRCL that was building the 2-kilometer Vivekanand Road flyover. Local offices of the company were reportedly sealed, and 5 of the firm's officials were detained for questioning.
IVRCL and its concerned staff will cooperate with the investigation. We will give the maximum support what we have to give. We are anxious to know why it happened as well. We want to know the reason.
Ahead of the assembly elections, the tragedy triggered a political blame game between the Trinamool Congress and the opposition. Calling the flyover tragedy an act of fraud protected by the West Bengal government, the BJP sought a CBI inquiry.
क्लियर कट क्रिमिनल नेक्सस और क्रिमिनल कॉन्स्पिरेसी दोनों से जुड़ा हुआ केस लगता है, और इसके लिए जो भी रिस्पांसिबल है उसके खिलाफ कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए. बेहतर होगा कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट इस पूरे के पूरे प्रकरण की जांच सीबीआई को सौंपे, ताकि जो भी कल्प्रिट है, जो भी इसके लिए गुनाहगार है, जिम्मेदार है, उसके खिलाफ कार्रवाई.
The more important and fundamental question is who was responsible, who is the contractor who had been given the work, which is the agency which gave the work, which ministry does it come under. Those people must be held responsible, and if the Chief Minister has been directly looking after these developmental projects, then the Chief Minister of West Bengal must take responsibility.
They are one of the blacklisted companies, and that company is sitting on financial collapse. Everybody admits, and the way that representative of that company spoke as though it is act of God, it is atrocious.
This is not the time to indulge in politics. Kolkata police का एक team वहाँ ऑलरेडी पहुँच गया है हैदराबाद में एंड strictest action will be taken. Strictest action will be taken and the guilty will be booked.
An under-construction flyover collapsed on Thursday onto vehicles and street vendors below in the Bara Bazar area of Kolkata. The flyover started construction in 2009 and missed several deadlines for completion.
This tragic incident has taken precious lives of several people, but a tremendous politics has developed around it. This incident has left few questions as to who is responsible for this and what action will be taken against the culprits. With camera person Jiten, this is Pranav Goswami, Rajya Sabha TV, Kolkata.
And now let's head to Jammu and Kashmir, where PDP President Mehbooba Mufti will be sworn in as the first woman Chief Minister of the state on the 4th of April. Briefing the media about the details of the ceremony, PDP leader Amitabh Mattu expressed hope that she will preside in a new era of peace and prosperity in the region. Earlier, the PDP and its alliance partner, BJP, conveyed the mutually agreed date for the swearing-in ceremony to State Governor N.N. Vohra. The alliance parties had staked claim to form the government on the 26th of March, 2 days after Mehbooba Mufti was elected the PDP's legislature party leader. The state has been without a chief minister for the past 3 months after the death of Mufti Mohammad Saeed. Mehbooba was reportedly reluctant to take over as CM of the coalition government, even as she sought assurances from the central government on implementation of the agenda of alliance that the two parties had struck earlier.
जम्मू कश्मीर में फिर से पीडीपी बीजेपी की साझा सरकार बनने के लिए तैयारियां लगभग पूरी हुई है। मैं मानता हूं कि बहुत ही जल्दी अगले 2-3 दिन में सरकार फिर से बनने की संभावनाएं आज दिख रही है। दोनों पार्टियां अब मिलकर सरकार बनाने के लिए लगभग अपनी सहमति तय कर लिए है। जल्दी गवर्नर से मिलकर आगे की प्रक्रिया पूरा करेंगे।
And now let's head to Maharashtra, where women can now enter every temple in the state. The Bombay High Court today ruled that offering prayers at a temple is the fundamental right of a woman, and it is the government's fundamental duty to protect this right. The court ruled that temples in the state can no longer cite centuries-old traditions to ban the entry of women. The Maharashtra government has said it will take all steps necessary to comply with the order by enforcing a law that provides 6 months in prison for preventing anyone from entering a temple. Women activists have called it a landmark judgment and a victory for women. Listening to some of those reactions.
It is not restricted to any particular temple or particular place of worship. It will cover all the places of worship all over Maharashtra.
ये नारी शक्ति की जीत हुई है और हमने आंदोलन जो खड़ा किया था उसकी बहुत बड़ी ये जीत है। तो अभी आगे जो है वो आज कोर्ट ने आदेश किया है कि शनि प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर महिलाएं जा सकती है। जहां पे पुरुष जा सकते हैं वहां पे महिलाओं को एंट्री मिलनी चाहिए। तो कल जो है वो शनि प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर हम सम्मान पूर्वक जाने वाले हैं। हमारी सभी महिलाएं जो है वो शनि प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर दर्शन के लिए कल जाएगी।
This issue is not limited to a temple or a mosque or a church. It is about gender equality and gender discrimination. The honorable courts have given a landmark judgment in this particular case, and I think that we must implement it in all places of worship, or for that matter in all places per se. Man and woman have to be equal in the 21st century.
In this 21st century, women will fight for their constitutional rights and achieve it. I congratulate all the activists who fought for this.
Meanwhile, Union Minister of State for Home, Kiran Rijiju, today slammed China for blocking India's attempt to get the UN to ban Masood Azhar, the chief of the Pakistani-based terror group Jaish-e-Mohammed. Rijiju said that the government will take appropriate action against China's request to the UN committee to keep the ban on hold. In February, India had written to the UN calling for immediate action against Azhar under the Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee. India has called Masood Azhar the mastermind of the Pathankot airbase attack. It also maintained that such terror groups pose threats to other countries in South Asia as well. Tobacco product manufacturers in the country have decided to shut factories with immediate effect, citing ambiguity in the government's pictorial warnings policy. The Tobacco Institute of India, whose members account for 98% of domestic sales of duty-paid cigarettes, estimates that the move will result in a daily loss of 350 crore rupees. The move comes after the centre's notification directing that tobacco products carry larger pictorial warnings covering 85% of the display area on the packet. The September 2015 notification came into effect on Friday, despite a parliamentary panel describing the government's proposal as too harsh and wanted a drastic reduction in the size of the visual warning. The panel had recommended the message occupy just 50% of the space. A big lobby there. We'll keep an eye out for developments. Meanwhile, let's take you through what else made news across the country in Nationwide. Leading Islamic seminary Darul Uloom Deoband today issued a fatwa against Muslim community members not to chant Bharat Mata Ki Jai, as there is only one God in Islam. On being questioned over the ongoing debate, the Darul Uloom Deoband spokesperson said that they love the country but believe only in one God. India will get its first semi-high-speed train Gatiman Express by the 5th of April. The train, which will run at the speed of 160 km per hour between Delhi and Agra, will cover the 184-kilometer distance in 105 to 110 minutes. Its speed is faster than the Shatabdi, whose maximum speed is 140 to 150 kilometers per hour. Pakistan's maritime security authorities arrested 59 Indian fishermen along with 10 boats for allegedly trespassing into Pakistan's territorial waters. The fishermen had been handed over to the docks police station in Karachi on Thursday for necessary legal action. The fishermen were charged under the Foreign Act and Fisheries Act. And now let's get you all the news and updates from poll-bound states in our special segment, Verdict 2016. The Election Commission of India has imposed a ban on conducting exit polls between the 4th of April and the May 16th in the 4 states and the 1 union territory that's going to polls during the period. According to the provisions of the Section 126A of the Representation of the People's Act 1951, exit polls cannot be conducted and publicized by means of print or electronic media or dissemination of any other manner starting from 7 a.m. on 4th of April to 6:30 p.m. on the 16th of May. The statement further added, displaying any election matter in any electronic media would be prohibited during the 48 hours ending with the hour fixed for conclusion of poll in each of the phases, quote unquote. Now, Assam will go to vote on 4th of April and 11th, West Bengal on 4th, 11th, 17th, 21th, 25th, 30th and 5th of May. Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry will go to the polls on the 16th of May. Counting of votes in all of the 5 states will take place on the 19th of May. Now, the election timings for Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Puducherry also are between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. and timings, of course, for West Bengal and Assam would be a little different depending on the topography of the constituency and the security situation. Meanwhile, BJP President Amit Shah will launch the campaign for the NDA in Kerala on the 9th of April. State BJP spokesperson J.R. Padmakumar confirmed that Shah will start his campaign at the Patanamthitta at 4 p.m. on the 9th. Apart from Shah, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his cabinet colleagues and Deputy Chief Minister of Goa, Francis D'Souza, are also slated to arrive in Kerala to arrive for the BJP campaign for the BJP in the state. The party is yet to open its account in the 140-member Kerala Assembly. However, it is heartened by recent poll results. It doubled the total number of seats in last year's local body polls as compared to its performance in the 2010 polls. In the 2014 Lok Sabha polls, the BJP's vote share for the first time touched double digits at 10.83%, up from 6% in the 2011 Assembly polls. The state unit of the BJP has fielded its top leadership and has also managed to rope in former Indian cricketer S. Sreesanth, who will contest from the Thiruvananthapuram Assembly constituency. With a quick break here, up next, international news. And South Korea claims that North Korea fired a short-range missile into the sea today. We'll get you details of that in a bit.
India perpetually in election mode, pointed out as a hurdle to development. Is Prime Minister Modi's suggestion of simultaneous elections for all an answer? And is this legally and practically feasible? Watch The Big Picture at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. Let's get international news now. In the 4th Nuclear Security Summit is in its final leg in Washington. Leaders from nearly 50 countries, including India, are deliberating on how to prevent terror groups like the Islamic State from getting their hands on nuclear weapons of mass destruction. Post the Paris and the Brussels attacks, there are mounting fears about the terrorist organization's nuclear ambitions. Now, from India's side, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will present a report on the steps the country has taken to secure its nuclear assets.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, drawing the world's attention to the threat of global terrorism. Sketching its evolution over time, he underscored how terrorists these days are using modern technology and devices, even as the response to them has become outdated. Modi underlined three contemporary features of terrorism. He said, these days terrorists are using extreme violence as theatre. They are using 21st century technology, but the responses in hunting them down remain rooted in the past. Thirdly, in an apparent reference to Pakistan, Modi emphasized the role of state actors who are working with nuclear traffickers and terrorists. He called them the greatest risk. The Prime Minister also insisted that countries must drop the notion that terrorism is someone else's problem. On nuclear security, Modi said it must remain an abiding national priority. US President Barack Obama also laid emphasis on the need to deepen international cooperation on counter-terrorism.
In the wake of the Brussels attack, with our memories of the tragedy in Paris, we have not only great urgency around the nuclear issue, but eliminating generally the scourge of terrorism.
Being hosted by Obama, the fourth Nuclear Security Summit is focusing on the rising tension in the Korean Peninsula amid provocations by Pyongyang. The US, along with Japan, South Korea, as well as China, have expressed their commitment to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Of great importance to both of us is North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons, which threatens the security and stability of the region. And President Xi and I are both committed to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and full implementation of UN sanctions.
我们两国对促进世界和平、维护稳定繁荣，这个负有更加重要的责任。
The Chinese president also stressed on the urgent need to combat nuclear terrorism amid a new round of international terrorist activities. 50 countries are participating in this year's edition of the summit. The meet comes amid mounting fears that terrorist groups such as the Islamic State are pursuing nuclear weapons. Concerns over Islamic State's nuclear ambitions have grown since Belgian authorities discovered video footage of a Belgian nuclear official in the apartment of a key member of the Islamic State-linked terrorist cell that was behind the deadly Paris as well as Brussels attacks. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And while that summit is on, South Korea today claimed that North Korea fired a short-range missile into the sea. The incident came just hours after leaders from the US, South Korea and Japan pledged to work to prevent North Korea from advancing its nuclear and missile programs. The surface-to-air missile fired from an eastern coastal area flew into the waters of the northeast coast, and South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement. It gave no further details, of course. The missile is the latest in a series of weapon launches by the North in an apparent response to ongoing military exercises between the US and South Korea. North Korea views the drills as an invasion rehearsal. In Washington, President Obama Thursday met with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts to discuss ways of deterring North Korea's nuclear threats before the two-day nuclear summit. But a defiant North Korea says it will continue to pursue its nuclear and ballistic missile program, saying that there is now a state of semi-war on the divided peninsula.
If the United States continues, then we have to make the counter measures also, as I told you. So we have to develop and we have to make more the deterrence, nuclear deterrence.
And helping us understand these nuclear security concerns and, of course, the implications worldwide, Pramit Pal Chaudhary is joining us this evening on the show. He's the consulting editor with the Hindustan Times. Pramit, thanks so much for being here with us. You know, first of all, just talking about the nuclear summit that's, of course, going on in Washington, the concern really, of course, is of the nuclear weapons falling into the hands of the ISIS. How real is that threat at this point?
Not too high, partly because ISIS does not control any country that has nuclear weapons. Syria had a chemical weapons arsenal. Iraq used to have some WMD capacity. Both of those have been eradicated. ISIS may consider a dirty bomb, in other words, getting radioactive material, not necessarily weapons-grade material, and mixing that with a conventional explosive to create a radioactive weapon. That is not a major killer, but could, of course, cause an enormous amount of alarm and terror. So far, only a dirty weapon seems to be the only possibility for ISIS right now. And one of the things that the Nuclear Safety Summit attempts to approach is exactly this. How do you secure low-grade nuclear material from being used by a terrorist organization?
And, while, of course, the 50 countries, mostly they're going to be presenting their progress reports on nuclear safety in their particular country, the US, of course, is also very clear and, it is paying attention to what is happening in North Korea, who somehow seems to be defying them one after the other. It's definitely not a terror threat in a significant sense, if you could talk about terrorism. But this is definitely a concern for them. And, even Iran recently saying, the Ayatollah, in fact, recently saying that, their missiles are crucial to them. Are these kind of statements that are coming in, how does it imply on a security summit that's going on at the moment, especially with the US as well?
Well, to be fair, the Nuclear Safety Summit is a second best nuclear gathering. The real big issues in nuclear non-proliferation, Pakistan, North Korea, to some degree big international treaties like the Fissile Material Cutoff Treaty and the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, these are not being addressed by the Nuclear Safety Summit. And in fact, I think the fact that Obama is either too weak or too disinterested to actually do the heavy lifting in diplomacy to get the big nuclear non-proliferation issues done, especially difficult because his own Congress is controlled by a Republican Party that does not support a lot of these issues. He has essentially created the Nuclear Safety Summit, which may cease to exist after he departs the presidency, to show that he wants to do something, but to actually not do very much. So the Nuclear Safety Summit really is about like-minded nations agreeing to do voluntary actions on nuclear safety. But it doesn't address maverick countries like North Korea or nuclear black marketing nations like Pakistan.
Absolutely. And like you were talking about it earlier, Pramit, you were saying that, the ISIS, the threat really of the ISIS getting hold of these weapons not as high as is being put out, especially in, the kind of situation that's developing now with the Paris and the Brussels attacks. But is this the kind of fear, is this the kind of hype that we also saw post 9/11? There were worries that the Al-Qaeda perhaps would get, its hand on these kind of weapons. Is that the kind of response that we'll perhaps be seeing as well, or perhaps a little more?
Well, I think the ISIS is seen as, in many ways, should we say, more violent and less coherent in its thinking than Al-Qaeda. The difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIS, the reason why they split, in fact, is that ISIS is an apocalyptic cult. It believes that the world is coming to an end, while Al-Qaeda is focused largely on straightforward political, it's like the overthrow of the Saud royal family and the creation of a caliphate. So obviously, if you're an apocalyptic cult, you're more likely to carry out acts of extreme violence without any political or rational basis for doing so. This is what makes ISIS more dangerous. Al-Qaeda would not see random acts of violence as being any purpose. ISIS, however, does. And therefore, a dirty nuclear weapon is something that ISIS would be prepared to consider.
All right,
which Al-Qaeda probably would think twice about doing.
All right, Pramit, thanks so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for now. Of course, we'll continue to give our viewers details really of the summit. Mr. Modi, of course, to be addressing it as well, presenting that report. Thanks so much, Pramit, for joining us. Meanwhile, talking of the Prime Minister, on Thursday, he met scientists of the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, or LIGO project in Washington, D.C. The team includes 3 Indian scientists as well who worked on that project.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi met the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory team led by the director of the National Science Foundation, Dr. Franz Cordova, on Thursday. He also witnessed the exchange of an MOU on the establishment of the LIGO in India.
Now that India has agreed to be a part of this project, the possibility is that India will become central to the LIGO project, partly on account of the fact that geography favors us. The plan is that the LIGO project has proved the gravitational waves theory based here in the US, but now they would like LIGO projects to be replicated in other parts of the world so that based on their geographical data also, they can prove the gravitational waves theory. And the project in India, the cabinet has already approved an outlay of 1,200 crores for the project in India.
The LIGO team includes 3 scientists. The Prime Minister's meeting with them comes just 2 days after he met scientists from the Institute of Plasma Research in New Delhi who are working on the LIGO project in India.
We discussed about what programs can we make for children and how we should make them in various languages, in various Indian languages. We also talked about making hands-on demos so that the kids can learn through those.
Last month, LIGO detected gravitational waves radiating from 2 black holes that crashed together about 1.3 billion years ago. The existence of gravitational waves were pictured by Albert Einstein a century ago. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's get you some more international news updates in Global Buzz. An earthquake measuring 6.1 on the Richter scale struck off the coast of Japan's Mie Prefecture on Friday. According to Japan's meteorological agency, the tremor was relatively shallow at a depth of 10. The epicenter located at 33.4 degrees north latitude and 136.4 degrees east longitude. The weather agency also said that no tsunami warning had been issued following the quake. Myanmar military MPs today said a plan to bolster Aung San Suu Kyi's power with a special advisory role was unconstitutional. This after the new civilian government tussled with the army just days after taking office. In a surprising act of parliamentary business by the new government, Suu Kyi's party proposed a bill to grant her a special state councillor position. China stepped up its criticism of the US on Friday after a senior US official said that Washington had told Beijing it would not recognize an air defense zone over the disputed South China Sea if China set up one. US officials have expressed concern that an international court ruling could prompt China to declare an air defense identification zone as it did over East China Sea in 2013. The Danish government extended random identification checks along the country's German border, saying they were needed to deter migrants from entering the country. In a statement, the integration minister said that it is necessary to extend the border controls so that large groups of refugees and migrants do not accumulate in Denmark. And now let's get you all the latest from the world of sports in SportsBeat. Defending champion Saina Nehwal advanced to the semi-finals of the India Open Super Series badminton tournament. Second-seeded Saina defeated a Korean player 19-21, 21-14, 21-19. She will next face a Chinese opponent. Indian boxer Shiva Thapa ended his campaign with a silver medal after losing in the final of the Asian Oceania qualifying tournament on Thursday. He went down 3-0 to a Thailand player in the summit clash. Shiva had already booked his ticket to Rio by making the finals after beating Kazakhstan's Kairat Yeraliev. New Zealand all-rounder Grant Elliott has announced his retirement from ODIs. In his career, Elliott scored 1,976 runs in 83 games at an average of 34.06. He notched up 2 centuries and 11 half-centuries. Elliott played an important hand for the team in the ongoing ICC World T20 as well. He is yet to take a call on his T20 career, though. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.